Have you ever wished you could travel all over the world and meet masterful people in the field of education? People you may not have known and the stories you've never heard. Cup of Capacity is just that. I wanted to introduce you to masterful people in education. Some are people I have known, and some I have heard about. They were chosen for their unique impact on education and to share the insights they've learned along the way. In a digital setting, each monthly episode features an in-depth conversation with a masterful leader as they explore their journey and answer a series of questions. Grab a refreshment and let's enjoy. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cup of Capacity. As you guys know, this is a podcast that is based out of my doctoral work, where I really saw the value in building capacity in other people. And so we focus on literacy leaders and just educational leaders. And I'm super excited to have with me today my guest, Dr. Tracy Weeden. She is a friend of mine, someone that I've known for a while. And she has been involved, as I have, in the field of education for quite a few years, and we fully enjoy our work in that role. She is currently the president and CEO of Neuhaus Education Center. She has worked in many large districts, including Katy ISD, where she was the district level support. She was the coordinator of personnel development and recruitment. In Houston, she was the assistant superintendent for curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And she's also worked outside of traditional education settings, such as in Scholastic, where she was the director of academic planning. So it is an honor and a privilege to have you with us today, Dr. Weeden. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mechiel, it's such an honor to be with you today. I think it starts with acknowledging that I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid. So you may hear a little resonance of that coming through today. And the second is that I'm the oldest of 7 children. So I've been teaching my whole life as mom number 2 in the household. And I went to Detroit Public Schools, and our schools were quite variable in terms of the effectiveness of what we were receiving instructionally. And my escape was a good book. My favorite place in the school was the school library, and that was due to my mother. She was a struggling reader because she went to maybe 14 different schools, having experienced extreme poverty and family dynamics that were very challenging. And she was determined that the 7 of us would just be avid readers, and all 7 of us are. And so I remember taking boxes and boxes of books back and forth to the library, and trying to locate the lost books and having book chats with my siblings. And so that was actually before Oprah. We had our own little white family book chats. Um, I'd say the other dynamic would be the aspect of speaking in what I call the language of power. I definitely love the dialect I was loved in, and I can switch code like the best of them. But um, definitely daddy, who had a stuttering problem, went to a Toastmasters program and then brought all of his speeches back for us to learn and to do and to learn all the tongue twisters. So all of this was really preparation for me. Um, then, after navigating my school experience with my best friend, who happened to be Mexican American, and we both had these big dreams about doing great things in the world, we stuck together through thick and thin. Um, Interestingly enough, at times being targeted by kids who were kind of hopeless about their future. So we were trying to make things happen. And so we were bullied, but we just held hands and pushed through. And when I graduated, um, one of the biggest impacts on me, not only my mother and my father, whose shoulders I stand on, but a cheerleading coach. I was the tallest cheerleader, but she was one of the best leaders I've ever met. And something about, you know, the sport of cheerleading, working with a team for something bigger than yourself and going all the way to nationals, that was a big game changer for me, amplifying my confidence and sense of self. So um, when I went to college, I was really toying with going into electronic journalism. I thought maybe I'll be a television broadcaster, be on the news, and do radio. And I loved all of that, but there was something missing. So I tried a few other things, and nothing was really clicking. So I literally prayed and said, okay, God, it's me and you here. What am I supposed to do with my life? I was volunteering in a community center teaching modern dance because I'm a dancer, and the light bulb literally, it's like I heard a voice saying, "You're an educator," and I'm thinking, "Of course you are." I've been coaching cheerleading. I picked that up, and um, I've always been teaching. Of course I am. So I switched course. I had just enough time to certify to become a teacher before I graduated, and so I know that wasn't an accident. And the rest is history, as they say. So there was just enough time for me to change where I was heading, and become certified to teach English. And the rest is history. I entered the same system I had graduated from as a Detroit public schools teacher, and taught English and theater arts and absolutely loved it. It was interesting, though, I saw that some of my kids who struggled with literacy in the English classroom and were totally unmotivated by that, in theater arts were willing to push themselves to read a script and to memorize the script, etc. And so I'm a person who loves the arts too, because I see that connection between those beautiful soft skills and experiences and teamwork and such that we learn, and how to apply, literacy in a way that's meaningful for kids, how important that is. Then I met my husband in New York City. I call him my chocolate cowboy, and ended up in Houston, but actually landed in Katy, Texas. As you mentioned, started teaching at Katy High School, but ended up being recruited to go into personnel. And I was promoted there, had a wonderful experience traveling the country, going to universities, from historically Black universities to our community, traditional university, excuse me, and saw the quite variable nature of teacher preparation programs. Of course, for Katie, we wanted the best of the best. So I realized now that was actually preparation for what I'm doing now as well. And after Katie, uh, the chief academic officer was named in HISD, and she tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to apply for assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction and assessment. I had that central office experience, I had campus experience, and I thought, are you kidding me? Well, I would say that experience was truly monumentally powerful, in that I had never seen the sheer scale of shaping change as what I saw in HISD. 200 elementary schools, a plethora of high schools and middle schools, and of course the early childhood centers, one of which you were leading in, and I loved and delighted in visiting you and seeing your great work. So, um, and in a decentralized environment, right? How do you shape and scale change in a decentralized world? And again, I think that was preparation, because really we had to market the curriculum. It was not mandated. And we trained a ton of teachers. I'd say one of the biggest takeaways from that experience for me, though, was how crucial it is for leaders to understand the nature of the work and how to support the teachers, because it broke my heart when I would have teachers asking me to speak with their principals so that they could apply evidence aligned practices. And I thought, something's wrong here. We've got to get that right. Um, so, shortly after, I'd say, 4.5 years under two superintendents, I had the opportunity to work on a national level. Again, my eyes were open in a totally different way, because I worked from coast to coast, from DC public schools to Compton USD, with superintendents, cabinet members, people over curriculum and instruction, over special education, over EL learning. And I saw this common variable, and that was that the critical mass of children were not learning to read properly the first time. And so my focus was helping them look at intervention services for their students. But what broke my heart, I'll never forget this. And this was the day when I crossed the Pettus Bridge to work with a district in Selma City in Alabama, and to see that around 80% of their kids were below proficient. It just echoed in my soul, as I think back to my forefathers who fought for civil rights, for excellent educational outcomes for kids, and that here we are in the 21st century, We know the science, and kids still aren't getting the treatment, if you will, that they deserve, the teachers, the leaders, the information they deserve. That just broke my heart. And shortly after that, that was when I heard from a national recruiter that there was this opportunity with a nonprofit. And I could see, looking back over my career pathway, how all of these pieces wrapped around this idea of building teacher capacity. We do partner with universities who want to revamp teacher preparation and leader preparation programs so that they are well apprenticed in the science of reading in evidence aligned approaches to applying that knowledge in practical ways, to working with state departments. Our first state department of education of all states, it would be Alabama. How ironic, right? Full circle. And this past year, we were able to take all of our professional learning, flip it to virtual. Coaching is virtual, and we press on to get this work done all across the state of Alabama. It gives me goosebumps when I think about it. And so we have others just lining up behind Alabama saying, how did you do this? And so I think about a dyslexia therapist in training who started with face-to-face training and then moved to Hong Kong and found out we flipped our work to virtual. So we're starting our first Hong Kong cohort of dyslexia therapists in training. And I see that there is absolutely no ceiling on our potential to have a butterfly effect that is profound. So, with Neuhaus to be able to not only focus on prevention of reading failure and helping teachers get it right the first time and articulating that work throughout the system so that folks who are working in silos in SPED or curriculum, we believe in bringing all these people together to look at this problem of practice,
Right.
literacy success. One of the things that I really value is how our work creates the potential for districts to overcome the silo effect where educators are working so hard and with such commitment, but they're not aligned in their work. And so you might have SPED over here doing work, dyslexia over here, curriculum doing this, but they're not really talking to each other. And we love to help them map and unpack the three variables that they can control. And that's how they're using their time, their talent, and their funding. And inevitably, they'll discover that there's some things that are not really moving the needle. And it's sort of, why are we doing this? Let's strategically abandon those practices and let's prep the system for what will actually move the needle. Let's think about sustainability. Who do we need to build capacity in, like leaders such as principals, central office leaders, interventionists, etc. And then how do we responsibly roll out this initiative for sustainable change? And when I see districts that do that work well and we get to be that shoulder partner, it is absolutely incredible because I realize we are literally transforming the family tree through literacy. Those scholars who leave the system equipped for college and workforce readiness will actually take some of these practices to their own children. It's interesting because when children learn these routines, they will, if they have a substitute, show the substitute how to do the work. So I know it's going to have a profound ripple effect beyond, that season that we're in a district, and and the fact that our nation has the highest percentage of incarceration of any country in the world. When we realize that in our state of Texas, 49% of inmates are likely dyslexic, and on a national level, 50%. And when we think about adjudicated youth and how 85% of those who end up in the court system are functionally illiterate, there's this clear through line that really promotes reading and literacy for me as a civil right for all children, regardless of zip code, regardless of the language they're loved in and the dialect they speak. And it is the currency of the 21st century. If they do not have the ability to read, write, and express their thoughts and ideas in the language of power, they will not have a place at the table, and they might end up on the menu.
That's such a fantastic I think that there's so many connections through the conversation that we've had today. First of all, just like you, I did not start off as an education major. My mom was a teacher, and that's you commonly find that where people don't want to be whatever their parent is. But we feel driven by so many things. And so I share that with you. And then also, I literally, as you described being in Alabama and supporting children, I got chills and I have chills again because I can completely, I can't say that I have been there, but I can completely feel um, and share with you. I don't even think I have the words. I share with you that sense of urgency and
Yes.
that understanding of what a lack of literacy can mean in the lives of children. Um, and while we're saying for all children, we know that if you have enough things in your way, then you are making it virtually impossible for somebody to be successful. And so, most obviously, we have a very inequitable system. And then I feel just like you, very, very called to, you think about, I don't think it's a sign of old age, but I think it's a sign of a certain age that you think, when my time is done, what do you want to say? What impact did you have while you were on this earth? And so, knowing that over 150 years, the general statistic that about 60% of all children are reading below grade level. You can pretty much pick that number in any city, any state,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere, and you're going to hit, it could be worse, but it's probably not going to be better. So
Yeah,
that's unacceptable. And
it
within
is.
within our lifetime, our collective lifetime, yours and mine, I think we both want to feel like in whatever way that we do make change. And we because 150 years people have been arguing about how to best do this. And so I really appreciate you. And when you mentioned being able to work with school districts, so many times there's so much in the life of a superintendent that they're having to manage, or their teams. You and I both worked at the district
Yes,
level.
absolutely.
um, but that person who helps keep the main thing beyond safety and social emotional literacy. I think as superintendent, you and I both know once quipped that if kids can't read, why are you spending time on anything else? I think it's very, very
Exactly.
true. So I really celebrate and share with you. And I think that's why we love each other so much, because we have that shared belief system and passion for making sure that all children are equipped with the things that they need. And by all, we mean all.
And I would agree with you on that, as well as I know we are kindred spirits in that we believe in investing in people. Adults are just kids in stretched out skin, and we need to believe in them. We need to have high expectations for them. We need to support them to succeed and win their race. And that's how you operate as well. And that's what gives me the greatest joy is when I see people living their best life professionally and making a difference.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So, you and I both have been involved in TCWSE.
Yes.
And so that is a huge component of mentorship. And I know that you are a mentor in so many other aspects. Can you talk a little bit about maybe one or two people who served as mentors to you in your life?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. I would say, first of all, my best boss ever was a gentleman named Sam Howe with Scholastic. And he had a geek squad, he called them. And we would look at disaggregated data for districts before we went in to understand the nature of the challenges they faced. He just believed in his people. He supported us. He challenged us of ourselves. I will never forget him calling on Fridays. He knew I'd be like cranking away still. And he'd say, I have a directive for you. Go to the wall, take your cord out of the wall, unplug your computer, and stop and rest and take care of you. But I think the biggest impact he gave me was teaching me to interpret data. And one of the data reports was called cumulative funding loss. So we would look at the critical mass of kids dropping out of high school and the title funds that would flow out of the district and fall through the cracks because the kids were leaving. You would be astonished by how much funding was being lost because kids couldn't read and gave up. And so the idea of prevention is also preventing funding loss that could be spent on enrichment for all, for children who don't have those rich experiences that I can pay for my kids, right? And that's what I find in the districts who get this work right. Instead of spending all this money on intervention, they spend it on enrichment.
Yes.
Yeah,
And even
that's one.
I'm picturing in my mind a 3 column. If you did an analysis on money that was used on programs that were not effective or just stuff,
Shocking.
and then how much you're spending on interventions, and then what could you, yeah, there's a lot of analysis
Right.
when we slow down.
Yes, indeed. I would say Karen Senji Garza, who was the chief academic officer in HISD, was a wonderful role model for me. She knew how to get people together and focus on getting things done, and she really cared about principles. They're some of the hardest working, least valued people in a system. I know teachers are too, but principals really get beaten up sometimes, and they're trying to do the right thing. And I just love principals. So I think the way that she, under the radar, really tried to be an advocate for principals meant a lot to me and was a great example for me. She understood the importance of a aligned curriculum and training people so they could apply the principles. So, very strategic leader.
I if you saw me, audience, looking up, it's because there's a bookshelf in front of me, and I don't have it handy, but 2 shelves up is a photo of myself with Dr. Sinji when I was a principal,
Really?
and that, yeah, and I, great minds. It's not great minds think alike. It really is, you know,
Yes.
recognize great leaders. And I agree with you. I think so many times if we were sitting around with a group of friends, probably similar names and stories would be shared. And I wholeheartedly agree
Yes.
with you. She still is such a great leader. And I agree with you. We know through research the biggest unit of change is at that classroom level. So that's why the classroom teacher, obviously, they're
Yes.
impacting the children. But then the second most is that school principal and making sure they need to be fed the same way children and teachers need to be
Yes.
fed, and in a very supportive, flourishing environment. And we've both
Yes.
been, I've been a principal at many levels, pre-K to high school. And so, yes,
Mm,
it is key. And
yes.
I, I knew early on, although I was not sure if I wanted to be a teacher, but once I was going to be a teacher and I knew I was called to be a teacher, I immediately knew I was going to be a principal because I wanted to create those environments where
Mhm.
people could flourish. I was very, very passionate about that. And
You
it's
were.
oh,
I remember.
not about creating a Garden of Eden because
Very,
that
very.
it's old, but it is about creating a shared, really rich environment for people to flourish. So,
And that's culture, and culture trumps our strategies.
yes,
So when people know how to shape that kind of a culture, it is just astonishing what people can do. And they will run through a wall for you
yeah,
if they know you've got their back and you're there to support them and not micromanage them, but help them run their race.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, a question I have for you is, what is a talent or an ability that you possess that very few people know about?
I would say um, probably dancing. I mentioned it earlier. I love to dance. I play piano, not as well as I used to, and I sing. Um, I sing better with a choir. I have done solos, but I don't think I'm that great with singing. But I love the arts. I love acting. My kids and I, um, we had this little game. We play American Idol, and we'll go off and dress up as somebody and come back and act. They all have that bug in them too, for the arts. So I'm an artsy girl.
That's something I didn't know about you. So that's one part of Cup of Capacity, learn something new. And it makes total sense. I
Mhm.
knew about your spiritual side, but I did not know about your love of the arts. And so I really appreciate loving hearing more about that. I am curious. Well, my favorite question to ask people is, if you're reading a really good book, whether it's for work or for fun, what are you snacking on?
Mm. Stephen Kleinberg's The Prophetic City. And it's about how Houston is a picture of what our country is going to look like over the coming decades, and how if we can get things right in our city, it can be a beacon of light for the world. And I just think it's so serendipitous that I ended up here in one of the most diversities in the country and just get some things right. And then being able to share these stories broadly, nationally as I.
So you shared that you love Dr. Kleinberg's work, and I've heard him speak a couple of times. I think you have as well, and I also love his work.
Yes. Oh, yes. He's spoken for us.
Okay. So if you're reading some of his information, what would you be snacking on? Something sweet or savory would you be snacking on while you're reading?
I love dark chocolate peanut butter cups. They are addictive. Um, that is my thing. And I love a little glass of Merlot to go with it because it's supposed to be good for you,
Yeah,
a little Merlot with the dark chocolate. So I've got, health, pleasure, all that covered.
perfect. Um, so if you had someone who was going to be supporting at the district level and in whatever role, what piece of advice would you offer to them?
If you have to do it afraid if it's the right thing to do.
Okay, I love it.
Remember the acronym FEAR is false evidence appearing real. And it's okay to fail forward and to do things afraid. I sure did in HISD. I was terrified half the time I was there because there were so many politics to navigate, personalities. But the bottom line is, when I did the right thing, even if I had to do it afraid, if it was best for the kids in front of me, it all worked out. And then the other part of that coin is walk by faith. You have to choose to fill that void with something. And I created an acronym for myself that I hope feeds your soul and the soul of the listeners. And that is focused adults intervening tenaciously with hope. Don't give up. There's always hope. If you hit a wall, if you had a bad experience with someone who doesn't believe in you and know how special you are and what you have to offer, to quote my friend Mechiel Rozas, their opinion of you doesn't matter. It's none of your business. Your opinion of you is what matters. If you believe, as I do, that one day we'll give account to a higher power, that's the opinion that matters. So be a person of integrity. And even if you have to fall on your sword, if you can put your head on your pillow at the end of the day and sleep soundly because you know you did the right thing without compromise, you're okay.
Thank you for that. I think that that is the most perfect advice. You and I both have worked in very large systems. And when you're working in very large systems, it can become very easy to hide and to protect your position.
Yeah.
It is much more challenging to say, you know what, I'm going to have an impact. And when people are talking about me years from now, there'll still be people who will, it's not for your glory, but it's about
No.
doing what's right for kids, being vulnerable and taking that risk. And so I just amen your advice. It is the perfect advice.
You know what's so interesting um, is that a person who is excellent in his or her work will not stand before obscure men. They will stand before kings. My dad taught me that. He's not here anymore,
Mm,
but his words live on in me, and I know it's the truth. So
yeah.
even if you suffer for being a good leader, when you are outstanding, you will always, always rise to the top.
That is so important, I think, for everyone to remember and say to themselves, because then that's going to support you and comfort you when you're taking those risks. Dr. Weeden, I want to thank you so much for your time today, as we have been here in Cup of Capacity, and thank you
It's
for
an
your.
honor. Thank you for being such a visionary and coming up with something like this to feed other people's spirits and souls and intellects.
Oh,
I'm
thank
proud of
you,
you.
thank you. Hey, thanks for listening to this interview. I hope you found value in the conversation, made a connection with your own life, and had an aha moment or two.